There's the first irony. The man who is mocked as king is king. And then, secondly, in verses 32 to 40, the man who is utterly powerless is powerful. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." More irony. 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." Now here is a horrible picture of the most abject weakness possible. When sentence was passed, you were beaten again. Then you were forced to carry the cross member, the horizontal member of the cross, on your shoulder out to the place of execution, where the upright was already in the ground. And there you were either nailed or tied to the cross member. It was hoisted up, and you were stripped, and you hung there. Not with a convenient loincloth. When men and women were crucified, they were crucified naked. It was meant to be shameful as well as painful. In former times, there had been occasions when the soldiers had left somebody hanging there, and friends had actually managed to come along and take the person down, and they'd survived. At this point in Roman history, that wasn't possible, because it was imperial policy now to leave a quaternion of soldiers there to guard the body until it was unambiguously dead. And you pulled with your arms and you pushed with your legs to open up your chest cavity so that you could breathe. And the muscle spasms would start, so you'd collapse. And you couldn't breathe. Then you pulled with your arms and you pushed with your legs so that you could breathe. And then the spasms would start and you'd collapse. That could go on for hours and sometimes days. And the soldiers would keep watch. That's why if they wanted to finish you off for any reason a little faster, what they do is just come along and smash your shin bones. Then you couldn't push with your legs anymore, and you'd suffocate in a few minutes. Listen, at this point, Jesus is as powerless as you can imagine. There is no way out. There is no hope. And he's so weak from his repeated beatings, he isn't even strong enough to hoist the cross member on his shoulder and take it out to the place of execution. Jesus, by trade a carpenter, can't lift a piece of wood. So they have to Shanghai somebody else to do it for them. And then the mockery begins. You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. Now where does this charge come from? Seems strange in our ears. But it too showed up in the trial. Not the trial before Pilate, but at the previous chapter, chapter 26, the trial before the high priests. The reason it could be entered was this. The Roman Empire was a highly diverse place, religiously speaking. So one of the things that the Romans did to try to keep peace was to make it a capital crime to desecrate a temple, any temple. If you desecrate a temple, under Roman law, you die. So if someone heard Jesus saying, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it again, then maybe that could be worked into conspiracy for a capital crime. That is, destroying a temple. Do you see? But they couldn't get their story straight, and it didn't work out to be the crime that they actually charged him with. They charged him finally with treason, being a king over against Caesar. But now, as some people heard this debate and charge at the trial, they look at Jesus in this most abject weakness, without any strength at all, and they say, yeah, big mouth, You're so strong, aren't you? Going to destroy a temple and build it in 3 days? Look at you now, huh? And again, they're being ironic. If you work for Habitat for Humanity, with a decent foundation, a lot of planning, a good engineer, and 40 strong-backed volunteers, you can put up a house in a day. But you couldn't put up one of the ancient temples in a day. You couldn't put up one of the cathedrals of Europe in a lifetime. Not one of the original architects of the great cathedrals of Europe ever saw the finished product. It took more than one lifetime to do it. And the temple in Jerusalem, just this current beautification, had already been going on for 46 years. More. By Jewish law, you are not allowed to hammer a stone within ear distance of the temple. All those stones had to be measured and cut and brought in without hydraulics and fit into place. No wonder the temple took a long time to build. And Jesus says, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll build it again. What kind of power is that? So when they say, you who destroy this temple and build it in 3 days, what they really mean is this is a lovely piece of ironic humor. You're actually just hopelessly weak, dying and damned on a cross. But Matthew knows. And God knows. And the readers know that by his death and the resurrection around the corner, Jesus is destroying the temple and rising again. Jesus did use these words, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it again. I'll raise it again. He used them early on in his ministry. You can find them if you want to look them up later in John chapter 2. And at the time the disciples didn't have a clue what he was talking about. Jesus is saying something deep again, very enigmatic. But then John comments, after Jesus had risen from the dead, then they remembered his words and they believed the scriptures. The point is the temple in the Old Testament, as we have seen earlier, was the great meeting place between God and human beings. It was the place of sacrifice. Now Jesus comes along and referring to his own body says, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it again by the destruction of his own life and its resurrection again. He becomes the great meeting place between God and human beings. He becomes the great temple with all the power that is required in resurrection. The great meeting place between God and human beings is not some sacrificial system in Jerusalem or elsewhere. It is Jesus himself. Thus, while the mockers see some cheap irony, we cannot help but see an even deeper irony. For the man who is utterly powerless is in fact powerful. He's the temple of the living God.